Bonjour, mes amis. Welcome, everyone, to the First Unitarian Congregation of Ottawa. Whether you are here in Worship Hall or watching from wherever you may be, know that you are welcome here. I'm the Reverend this congregation's lead pastor, and I'm thrilled to be with all of you as we gather on an absolutely beautiful snowy Sunday morning. Beautiful as long as you do not have to shovel or drive, but beautiful all the same. This is the last Sunday in February, the last Sunday before our traditional coffee hour and 10:30 a.m. start time return. What's the phrase? As God intended? This morning, I'm joined by our worship associate, Kate, and our interim music director, Kirk, and members of our fusion choir. This morning, hopefully soon, we will welcome back our friend and special guest, Vida Ng, the executive director of the Canadian Unitarian Council. We welcome her in all our winter glory, such that her rental car didn't have operational windshield wipers. She is set to arrive via Uber shortly. Our children are downstairs for their Our Whole Lives class again this morning. Am I the only one that misses them and that energy here? I look forward to being one church again soon. And yet here we are, so let us celebrate that fact. Let us sing together this morning. Please rise as you are willing and able as we begin with Morning Has Come, number 1000 in our teal hymnal.
Thank you, Kirk and Fusion. Good morning, everyone. Once again, welcome to the First Unitarian Congregation of Ottawa. My name is Kate, and I am delighted to be your worship associate this morning. Whether you're taking part in this worship service from your home or wherever else you may be, and whenever you may log on, you are welcome here. We acknowledge that our FirstU campus is located on traditional, unsurrendered, and unceded Algonquin Anishinaabe territory, and that the work of reconciliation is a responsibility of our congregation and of all Canadians. Our goal is to educate ourselves, to all those that have the willingness to understand, to be of service to those who are at risk, and to advocate for justice. Do take care and take advantage of online opportunities at FirstU to stay in touch during this protracted pandemic. If you're new to FirstU and would like to learn more about us, please contact us either through our email, which is welcome@firstunitarianottawa.ca, or that is welcome@firstunitarianottawa.ca. And if you're right here in Worship Hall and have some questions or like more information, check in at the welcome table with Dory at the back of the pews. Now here's Brent from our board to highlight our announcements for today. Thanks, Brent.
Thank you, Kate. Good morning, everyone. As Reverend Eric mentioned, but it bears re-mentioning, next week Sunday service will start at our pre-pandemic time of 10:30 and will be followed by coffee hour in Fellowship Hall. We're very much looking forward to this. Bear in mind that the week following you'll be setting your clocks forward, so your biological clock and your ecclesiastical clock will be fighting with each other. There are several other announcements. You may have heard that there was a devastating apartment fire in Overbrook this past week, setting dozens of families without home and without many of their belongings. One of our newer congregants, Tess Frost, is coordinating donations of warm clothing, footwear, and toys. Tess is at the back of Worship Hall right now, and she will be available to help coordinate any pickup or drop-off of your donations if you wish to help after service today. If you would like to contact her during the week, I can share her contact details with you via president@firstunitarianottawa.ca. There are 3 upcoming vacancies on the board to fill at FirstU's next annual general meeting. Serving on the board is a rewarding opportunity to engage with and serve the congregation and to help shape how FirstU succeeds in its mission. If you think this opportunity might interest you, you can speak to any board member, such as me, or Phil. I saw Amy's here today, Mariella is here. Or you can speak to our nominating committee at nominating@firstunitarianottawa.ca. And Mike Fletcher and I'm sorry, I'm also seeing David Chernyshenko on the board. Mike Fletcher and Mary Jackson are on nominating committee. You can speak to them today if you wish. Finally, I'm excited to announce the launch of a FirstU fellowship group for adults aged 18 to 45, starting with a games night this Friday evening, March 3rd at 7 o'clock. If you are interested, you can check the EUU for more details, or just roll the dice and come out this Friday evening. Vida will join us later on, we hope. So, Donna, could you provide us with EAG announcements?
Hi, everybody. I'm Donna Bowen-Willer from the Environmental Action Group. So lots of action. Take a look at the Climate Action page. Click over from the EUU. There are 3 upcoming events, including a Fridays for Future Ottawa rally this Friday at noon, protesting the federal funding of gas and oil. More information on the Climate Action page. And under the Enviro Actions, February is almost finished. Mike back there continues to ask for your feedback on his draft climate-friendly living in multi-unit residences. Please by March 1st, so that's not too far. And there's another thing coming up, a time-limited one, our new advocacy. And we have until March 16th. Public comment is invited on the proposed ZEV regs. So what are the ZEV regs? Well, recently the federal government proposed new rules to boost the number of zero-emission vehicles, ZEV, and it's set out so that by 2035, all light-duty vehicles produced will be ZEVs. But it's vital that these regulations be strengthened in the final draft. There's a lot more information on the climate action page, and you'll find a link to a simple guide to help you comment on that. And we'll have this going on for a couple of weeks until March 16th. So if you can read up, we will try and help you to be able to make comments on these. The automakers are trying to discourage it, so we need to have a public input to encourage it. Okay, thanks a lot.
Thank you, Donna. We encourage you to sign up to receive the EUU, our weekly email newsletter. Check our Facebook and Instagram pages and our webpage for notices and updates. Our calendar continues to be as full as ever, though as global health challenges continue, many of our activities still online. Whatever your heritage, whatever your faith, whomever you love, and however you identify, today you are part of our spiritual community. Welcome.
Our special guest has just arrived, but I'm not going to embarrass her by pointing her out to anyone. Vita, if you want to, we'll give you a moment to speak later in the service, but main thing is it's good to see you safe and sound. Welcome. We light our chalice this morning to these words by Maureen Kaloran. In these times, let us look first to the response of love. In the midst of challenge, may our chalice flame bear witness to the inherent worth and dignity of every human being. In the midst of uncertainty, may our chalice be a beacon of encouragement that our values may guide our choices. Let us look first to the response of love. Our chalice is lit. Come, let us worship together.
Centering words by Andrew C. Bacchus. We come, drawn by one another, and by the hope that we might discover hidden meanings, that we might once again trust a mystery. From pains and pressures, from problems and plans, we lift ourselves out and join together to share a corner of time and to make it sacred. We celebrate life in all its unexpected pleasures and its dashed hopes. We celebrate love in all its power to heal and its promise of a false simplicity. Now we are together again, and in peace we join our hearts and minds in order that we might create among us. And when the advancing edge of time, always so near, cuts us apart, and walls and worries separate us once again, let our creation sustain us, and may we remember that we shall meet again. And now let us sing together once more. Please rise as you're willing and able, and join me in singing Follow the Drinking Gourd, number 152 in our gray hymnal. This hymn, as you may know, was a teaching song, one of many such songs that provided clues that those who escaped from slavery needed as they navigated their way north to freedom.
Each week at this time, we pause in recognition of both the joy and sorrow in our lives and across the globe. We honor the celebrations and challenges by placing a stone in a bowl of water. As the ripples extend outward, we can imagine them continuing out beyond this small bowl, out beyond and past our pews, out into the larger community as well. Last Friday marked the anniversary of Russia's invasion of Ukraine 1 year ago, which our choir will commemorate later during our time together this morning. A stone for those continuing to make the best of it in Ukraine. A stone for all those who have fled. A stone that Putin will find a way to save face without further bloodshed. And a stone for all the families who have worried about the safety and well-being of loved ones wherever they may be. And against this backdrop of the world stage, we live our lives. The stone this morning for the family of Joan C. We are thinking of you, Joan, as your family faces continued medical challenges. Usually, over the last several months, I've made sure to have a stone of joy. This morning, I have joy in the utter resistance that the people of Ukraine have manifested over these last 12 months. May that continue long. They are a lesson to humanity. A card for Joan's family is on the back of the hall for us to sign there on the caring table. Even if you don't think you know Joan, signing her card for her and her family with your name is a way for the congregation, for us, for you, to extend our appreciation for all they have done to make this community as truly vital as it is. And as always, before we move into a time of stillness and reflection, after which Kirk will bring us together back again with the gift of music, a stone for all the joys and sorrows that remain in the silent sanctuary of our hearts.
Good morning. My name is Phil Nagy, and I'm here to announce that FirstU has formed a renewal task force. Our task is to promote the idea that FirstU is back and ready to go. You'll hear a lot more from us. I first became a Unitarian about 30 years ago. When my wife Ann and I moved here in 2002, this congregation was waiting for us. It was a golden era. We had a large, thriving RE and youth program, a strong adult ed program, and vigorous social justice activities. This building had been up for some 35 years. Unitarian House was about 15 years old. And it wasn't long before River Parkway Children's Center moved into their own building from our basement. 3 major accomplishments any congregation would be proud of. My first involvement here was with the sanctuary case of a Bangladeshi man who lived within these walls for 18 months until the government finally recognized him as a refugee. It gave FirstU the kind of public visibility you just can't buy. As the case ended, we had the honor of presenting a brief on Canada's refugee system to the House of Commons Standing Committee on Refugees and Immigration. Our refugee program has continued through all these years, and we have successfully changed the lives of many people, bring them to safety from dangerous and difficult places. But about 15 years ago, demographics began to catch up to us. Our youth group and RE participants started to age out, and when they left, many of their parents did as well. Those who were the driving force behind our social programs started to retire from active service. With fewer people pushing a large number of projects, our social justice activities began to look scattered and thin. We had to refocus to do more with fewer people. We moved to themes that the entire congregation got behind: multi-faith housing, climate justice, reconciliation. New leaders stepped forward, but now they too are beginning to age. I think it's fair to say that our volunteer capacity is at a crisis point. We have single individuals trying to do what once was done by an entire committee. Many of these individuals wear 3 or 4 hats, replacing 3 or 4 committees, all doing things that we all agree are important to us. Those who are unaware of this lack of volunteers complain about lack of responsiveness. We need help. In the midst of this demographic slide, we ran into difficulties in our professional leadership and lived through 5 years of temporary ministers, trying to sort out who we were and where we were going. Then there was COVID. Attendance and revenue dropped just when we had to invest huge amounts in online technology. A monumental effort went into adapting to this new reality, and by and large, we have succeeded. But were it not for government subsidies and the generosity of individuals who gave large gifts or remembered us in their wills, we would have wiped out a good part of our investment, our nest egg. Then there was another casualty of COVID, our sense of community. We stopped seeing each other. Many programs were suspended. There was no coffee hour. We fought back with Zoom, hospitality hour, trivia night, discussion groups. All this helped a great deal, but there were still people we hadn't seen in person for years, or people we had never seen without a mask. It's a long road back. But we survived as a community. We have a strong new minister who intends to stay. We have thriving, focused social justice programs. We developed the award-winning Ajashki Project. We are attracting young people. Our RE and youth programs are once again growing. COVID is, fingers crossed, on the way to becoming something we just live with. We are once again in the building business, planning to add affordable housing to our beautiful property. It's going to take all of us pulling together to make FirstU the community we want. The Renewal Task Force includes me, Mary Jackson, Mary Ann O'Hagan, and Lee Rose. Mary and Lee are here, if you would stand up and wave. There's Lee, there's Mary. Mary Ann is someplace warm. Our mandate includes increasing volunteerism, sprucing up and modernizing our physical plant, and driving the annual Fall Pledge Drive. The pledge campaign will look a bit different from previous years, but you will recognize it. I promise. You can reach us at renewal@firstunitarianottawa.ca. Stay tuned for more from your 2023 Renewal Task Force. Thank you.
clerk, members of our choir, thank you. One of the things about worship in the Unitarian Universalist perspective is that we tend to be a little eclectic. You may have noticed that. And when I was writing my sermon, forgot that I was going to be following Fusion Choir. So if what happens next is jarring, my apologies to the choir, Kirk, and all of you. We're shifting gears if you haven't figured that out. How does the old spiritual go? There is more love somewhere, but I can't just say it. I have to at least try to sing it to bring the Spirit into this space and into my heart. There is more love somewhere. There is more love somewhere. I'm gonna keep on till I find it. There is more love somewhere. Thank you. That's good. I needed that help, as you know. In the following 3 verses of the song, the word love is substituted by hope, peace, and finally by joy. That's good. But the song, as much energy as it brings, is plaintive. Each verse ends on a plaintive note. What if we could make the song more uplifting? Shouldn't spirituals be uplifting? What if we added a new closing verse, something like, there is more love somewhere. I'm going to keep on. In fact, I've kept on until I found it. There is more love right here. Friends, that's what I did. I went into the musical archives of our denomination, our faith tradition, and the spirituals, and I found that elusive lost 5th verse. And for several years, 3 or 4 or sometimes 5 times a year, I led the congregation I then served in singing that song with that additional 5th verse. It was rousing. It felt wonderful. I felt powerful. Those in the pews and in the choir behind us got behind those lines. There was energy in the room. It felt good. Until black fellow religious leaders called me in. They didn't call me out. They didn't cause me to lose face. They simply made sure that I heard from their experience, heard from their perspective. What they said was that when I sang the song as I led it, I was missing the point of the song. There is more love somewhere is a plaintive spiritual. It's a song of yearning for something not yet at hand. And I also quickly realized in listening to them that the message I was inviting others in singing with me is not something I can ask anyone to sing but myself. Who am I to say what anyone has, can, or will find love. Where anyone else has, can, or will find a loving home, who am I to say? So on this last Sunday of Black History Month, that's what's been on the back of my mind. That's been the frame with which I've been learning more about the experience of Black Canadians, about the 30,000 women and men who escaped from slavery in the States and made their way here, Southern Ontario specifically, for freedom. And about the cases of slavery here up north before slavery was ended in the United Kingdom. And the letter Black folk here sent to Queen Victoria on Emancipation Day in 1854. Now, if you're interested in studying the current attempts to decolonize our experience, there are dissonant tones here, but listen to these words. To Her Most Gracious Majesty, Queen Victoria, may it please Your Majesty, we, the colored inhabitants of Canada, most respectfully, most gratefully, and most loyally approach Your Gracious Majesty on this, the anniversary of our death to slavery and our birth to freedom. With what feelings or with what words can we adequately express our gratitude to England for such a boon? Our hearts, the letter continues, are wholly Your Majesty's. And if time should ever come when Your Majesty might need our aid, our lives would be as they are, at your service. Toronto, Canada West, August 1st, 1854. And that can be found as the first appendix in Natasha L. Henry's book from 2010, Emancipation Day, Celebrating Freedom in Canada. And Canada West, as I now understand it, is what the province of Ontario was called then. Majestic words. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. I have to say, though, that I will be so glad when we no longer need things like Black History Month, when the range of voices that we pay attention to includes all who can call themselves Canadian. And yet, I have to admit it, need the reminder of dedicated months like this one. I am not sure I would have given much time to reading a book like Karen Flynn's Moving Beyond Borders, A History of Black Canadian and Caribbean Women in the Diaspora, an oral history of Black nurses in predominantly Toronto, but across Canada as well, without the prompting of Black History Month. But I loved reading that account. I like smaller histories more than wide-ranging ones. I like hearing voices of those who talk about their lived experience rather than simply trends, statistics, and legislation. I appreciated in that book hearing the voices of those nurses, learning that many of the women who immigrated here from the Caribbean did so via Britain. And there, they faced a starker racism than they found here in Canada, which provided an interesting, if not unexpected, result. In Britain, the women from the Caribbean, whether they from Jamaica or Trinidad or Barbados, wherever, came to identify as Caribbean women and forged strong bonds. Here in Canada, After that time in Britain, that Caribbean identity fragmented as those from Jamaica, Trinidad, Barbados pushed off against one another in what might be called, and this is a phrase that is new to me, island chauvinism. The balance of power between people is always so complex, isn't it? Here's another nugget from that book. Unlike other migrants who have successfully or even partially recreated a home away from their original homeland, one of the nurses, June, had this to say. Somebody asked me, how do you enjoy living in Canada? And I've always said to that question, I've adjusted to living in Canada. I don't know if I've been able to truthfully say I've totally enjoyed it. Maybe she was writing at the end of February, who knows? By the time, she continues, by the time you really start to see yourself as living here, you're becoming very much aware of the racism here. There's that balance. There's that balance. Just what racism June experienced here in Canada isn't spelled out, but it's worth noting that her experience here in the land of freedom, Canada, wasn't what she would consider ideal. And yet, and so I should say, we should never allow ourselves to become complacent. There is always room for making things even a little bit better. That said, I don't mean to be judgmental, or pessimistic. What's important more than anything is that we listen to the voices we might not otherwise hear. This is another excerpt from Flynn's work. Whatever form their activism took, the activism of those nurses, the interviewees displayed an unwavering desire to look beyond the individual self and to work to uplift the Black community. This desire motivated Daphne to establish an immigrant workers center. The role of family and church in the politicization of some of the interviewees is also evident. Growing up, their parents modeled and instilled in their children the principle of the collective versus the individual. They were taught to emphasize with those whose lives were encumbered by poverty and other social ills. Lily explained it this way. I come from a family that believes in teaching and a family that believes in community. We believe in giving, for in giving you receive. To underscore the significance of the preceding explanation, Lily asking the age-old question, who is thy neighbor? To which she answered, everybody. Not only the person next door, but all people, and that is not an easy thing to strive for. To love people and not be judgmental, and just because people are poor does not mean you can't talk to them. She sounds like someone in this congregation's social justice action network, doesn't she? The underlying theology may or may not be different, but the motivation is exactly the same. The destination of their aims is exactly the same. I'm sure one of the reasons I picked up the oral history of the nurses is that just after Christmas, my wife and I so thoroughly enjoyed an afternoon visiting a longtime member of our community, Joycelyn Luffleholz-Ray. My wife, Anne, and Joycelyn were both born in Jamaica, and Joycelyn worked as a hospital nurse here in Canada for years before she retired. And if you know Joycelyn, you know that she is also an author, a poet, and a painter. Here is Joycelyn's poem, Grief, from late in the summer of 1986. I have a painting in my head, one simply titled Grief, the kind of which one sees and hears, from which there is no relief. I feel it deep within my soul and stare, stoical, immune. Sometimes I think if this is real, I am facing my own doom. A scene where crafters overflow, spewing dust upon the land, and pastures that were once before are buried deep in sand. And often, even more than this, the sound of battle noise, where man creates eternal strife and guns are children's toys, where streams of living waters are polluted evermore and marine life becomes extinct, or oil slicks kill the shore. A place where food is ne'er found as vultures fly overhead, and ground is parched and nothing grows, and man is living dead. A land where threat of mushroom clouds just hovers, bidding time, and if by accident or sheer pluck, the shine will cease to shine. A nation where one man to man is neither keeper or brother, where one race thinks it's superior and has no kinship with the other. And yet, I want to call this grief, a time when man's bereft, a scene that leaves a ray of hope to salvage what is left, to salvage what is left. Those words echo. They echo the spiritual from earlier. There is still more love somewhere. They echo the need for renewal that Phil mentioned earlier. And they remind me of words that came out of an Aboriginal Australian women's collective in the mid-'80s. They're often attributed to a woman named Lila Watson, but they came from the collective she was a part of. You may have heard these words before. If you have come here to help me, you are wasting your time. But if you have come because your liberation is bound up with mine, then let us work together. We need to listen to the voices that we may not otherwise hear. They have much to teach us about balance in the ways of the world. They have much to inspire us with their songs, poetry, and wisdom. And together, we will find the birthright that all of us are due. Thank you, my friends. Thank you.
This congregation has a long history of care, vitality, and bringing people together to move the arc of justice forward. We've been able to live into our hopes and dreams because of the generosity of those within and beyond this community. Whether you are here in Worship Hall or anywhere else, you are part of this community. To make a gift in support of the work of the congregation, you don't need to use the baskets that are now beginning to make their way among the pews. Wherever you are invited to go to our website or contact our finance manager to find out how to make a donation or to keep up with your pledge. Our gifts are freely given and gratefully received. We dedicate these gifts to the work of this community of faith, serving human wholeness, caring for the planet, upholding religious freedom, welcoming the stranger, loving one another. And before we sing our hymn, I'd like to introduce Vida Ng, the Executive Director of the Canadian Unitarian Council, who's going to say a few words about the CUC's symposium that we'll be helping to host this May. And after we hear from Vida, we'll be singing our hymn.
Winters in Ottawa. Thank you, Eric, for being so flexible with your order of service. I was last here in October when you installed Reverend Eric, and it's my pleasure to be here again, even though it's the end of February. And I really want to thank you all for agreeing to be co-hosts for the CUC's National Symposium in May. Did you know that you agreed to do that? And you will be co-hosting with the Unitarian Universalist Fellowship of Ottawa. What is the National Symposium? It's the CUC's national gathering of Unitarian Universalists across the country, which is held every 2 years. And our last in-person gathering was in Hamilton in 2018. So that was 5 years ago. We were due to gather in Halifax in 2020, but we all know what happened to those plans. And because you have so much going on, your campus, your work with the Ontario Aboriginal Housing Services, the Ajashki Project, and now your renewal plans, your participation is more than triply appreciated. And we are asking for volunteers. We need people on the ground here to volunteer for childcare, for tech support, to be on site, ushers at the Sunday worship, which is led by your own Reverend Eric, people to take meal tickets, people to do running around. And you might wonder, how are we going to do all this with all the things we already have going on? The good news is it's time limited. It'll all be over by May 21. And Maury Prevot is the lead for the host team. And Kathy, who is watching on Zoom, wave to Kathy, is the volunteer coordinator. And Mary, Ella, and Andrew have signed up to host the Saturday talent show. More about that later. Brandon Milk from the UU Fellowship is their liaison to us for the symposium. And we also have swag. Anna DiFelice, who's the CUC's organizational administrator, is coordinating the logistics, and she has a different version of the T-shirt. Woohoo, Vanna! You will notice that Uni the unicorn is displayed on the T-shirt. And we will have Uni appearing in person, or should I say in people. We will have Uni, the Unitarian unicorn, and Uni, the Universalist unicorn, appearing at the symposium. So if you're curious about what that is, you should probably show up. And I really want to thank you again for agreeing to do this. If you're interested in volunteering or in finding out more about what's involved, come talk to Maury, talk to me, talk to Anna after the service. And we will have more information about how to get your swag. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And now, please rise as you're willing and able as you join in singing There Is More Love Somewhere, which is number 95 in our gray hymnal.
And there is. You can be seated. Before we close this time of worship and reflection, a reminder that our online fellowship hour will begin at 11:30. This may be the last time. We're not sure what's happening to fellowship hour that way, but coffee hour next week will be right out there. Fellowship hour you can participate here, out those doors and around to the right in the lounge. And I have to go back to that side because in Fellowship Hall shortly there will be fair trade coffee and chocolate for sale. You may want to check that out. We extinguish our chalice this morning to these words. We hold in faith that there is more love somewhere. And I, for one, hope that where we are now will be found one of those somewheres by those who are here now or who have yet to first walk through the doors behind you. May we keep on until we find it. May we keep on until we create it. May we keep on until we renew it once more. This morning's chalice is extinguished, but the spark of our connection and faith remains. Kirk Fusion Choir, will you bless us once more? We are people of both reason and heart, of both memory and hope. May we also always remain people of love, providing a place in this world for our spirits, a place that many may call home. And now, as we return to the challenge of helping the world come alive in love, let us go forward in peace, my friends. Let us go forward in peace. Amen.